So, dear participants, we would like to start. Dear President Professor Tolan, dear Professor Ammer as Vice President of Göttingen University, dear Professor Bührmann as academic lead of this conference, and dear representatives, teachers and students from ENLIGHT. I'm Hiltrud Kasper-Hehne, and I have the honor and privilege to moderate the official opening. This is the second ENLIGHT teaching conference we are happy to host you here in Göttingen. I'm also the academic project lead of ENLIGHT at the University of Göttingen and currently the chair of the ENLIGHT Directors Board. Ladies and gentlemen, last year the University of Ghent threw open its doors to host the first ENLIGHT Teaching and Learning Conference. Judging from the feedback of our Göttingen delegation alone, we have big shoes to fill. Luckily, we have much fewer corona concerns today than we did have back then. In fact, life almost seems to be returning to normal. The masks and tests remain, of course, but so does a new culture of digital connectedness. Hence, we are streaming this event live and have incorporated online and hybrid sessions into our program. We will also be streaming the awarding ceremony of the Teaching and Learning Award this evening. So our academic communities across the ENLIGHT network, from Uppsala to Bilbao, from Groningen to Tartu, from Ghent to Galway, and from Bordeaux to Slovakia can join us. I now welcome to the stage Professor Dr. Metin Tolan, President of the University of Göttingen and currently Chair of the ENLIGHT Governing Board, for the official opening of this year's ENLIGHT Teaching and Learning Conference. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Professor Kasper-Hehne. Dear distinguished guests and online viewers, we have already heard that this is the second Teaching and Learning ENLIGHT conference, and in Germany we say if something happens a second time, this means that this conference has already a tradition. And so thank you very much for joining here, and I would like to really thank you to all of you, to the educators, to the students and educational developers who came to this place from all over Europe and for joining us today in this beautiful university hall, which you can see here. I have the honor of opening this year's ENLIGHT Teaching and Learning Conference as the president of the Georg August Universität Göttingen and as chair of the ENLIGHT Governing Board, as it has been mentioned by Professor Kasper-Hehne. I also have the delight to welcome you to our nice little university town, where today and tomorrow you will be sharing your know-how on innovative, student-centered and research-oriented learning approaches. So far you have already entered 2 or even 3, or I would say at most 3 of our university buildings. Given the reputation of the Georg August Universität Göttingen as one of the most historically relevant higher education institutions in Germany, I will now take you to a very brief, very brief historical excursion. In 1737, the year of the university's founding, by the way, which is not so clear, you will hear this in a minute. The year of the university's founding, Göttingen was only a tiny provincial town, hardly worth putting on a map. And that hardly changed in the beginning. Even though the founding of the university meant to raise the prestige of the House of Hanover, whose elector had just been crowned King George I of Great Britain. Even though the founding university stood for a significant reform project because it was designed in the spirit of the Enlightenment. And even though the official opening spared no pomp and circumstance. as we do today, of course. There was no new building for the university. An old Dominican monastery provided the rooms and lecture halls. In fact, it is historically proven that the first lecture was even held already 3 years earlier in 1734 in a barn. And also the professors at these days taught their students in their own houses. So now at our university nowadays belong, I think, 280 buildings. At that times, the professors had to use their own houses. And even the streets were undrained, so if it rained, you could not get to any destination with dry feet. Probably this was today also the case. And worst of all, there was neither a decent coffee house nor a proper winery. Of course, in Göttingen, conditions changed, albeit slowly after 100 years. This grand building here, which we are sitting in, was given to the university as a gift by King Wilhelm IV as a present. But even in this gift, we see that the generosity had its limitations. On your way out, I invite you to knock on the columns of this room. You will find that they are made out of cheap wood and not, as they pretend, of marble. You just have to check it out. But did that seeming stinginess make effect to the quality of the teaching? I don't believe it did. Göttingen became one of the most prominent centers for university reform and outstanding teaching, attracting great academics and brilliant students from all over Germany and from Britain. The students lauded the academic environment here in Göttingen. Well, most of them did this. Otto von Bismarck, the first Chancellor of Germany in the mid-19th century, famously complained about the boredom he had to endure in the city, which forced him to behave in the most outrageous fashion, so that he was put to jail here in this building, into the so-called Karzer, which is located here on the second floor. I don't know if it is possible for you to take a look. Then you can really see the jail where Otto von Bismarck was sitting for 3 days or so. At these times, students had to go to jail. This was quite normal at these times. But judging from the sources we have available, his opinion was in the minority. And this is where I end the history lesson and engage with the present, namely with ENLIGHT. Like the founding of the university nearly 300 years ago, ENLIGHT is already brimming with opportunity. We are glad to receive funding from the EU, from the German Ministry of Education and Research, and from the DAAD. But these funds only come alive when they are filled with your initiatives, with your ideas, and when they enable us to expand our horizons through collaboration. You are here today to share best practices and thereby enable 9 excellent institutions to become even better teaching and learning places. The specific focus of this conference is diversity and inclusion. It is an area in which we have come far since the founding days. In recent years, we have developed an inclusive and transformative diversity strategy using a broad participatory approach at the Georg-August-Universität Göttingen. But at the same time, we nevertheless have a way to go. At the end, please let me thank everybody who helped to prepare this event, who contributed also to this event. Thank you very much for all the work to prepare this conference. I am confident you, the participants here and online, will enjoy your stay here in Göttingen. We have a fascinating program in store for you over the coming days, and I assure you we have learned from the past in more ways than one. So we will, of course, provide you with decent coffee and even with tasty wine during your stay here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Tolan, for your inspiring words. And indeed, we are all aware of the great achievements we reached in the last years or the last 2 years, and we are looking forward to engaging with the important tasks which lay ahead. As our next speaker now, I would like to welcome to the stage Professor Christian Ammer, our university's Vice President in charge of student and academic services. The floor is yours.
Thanks a lot. It's a pleasure for me to welcome you also to the University of Göttingen. And I would like to start with a quote from Willy Russell's play Education Rita. Maybe some of you know it. Fashioned on George Bernard Shaw's play Pygmalion and set in the context of a British university in the 70s, Education Rita challenges many things. Woman roles, class divides, but also the purpose and effect of university education. And in the play, Frank, the disillusionated tutor and failed poet with an alcohol problem, warns his student Rita that, and now I cite, to pass examinations, you're going to have to suppress, perhaps even abandon your uniqueness. And this, even though this quote may be 40 years old, but it still shakes those of us, at least it does when it comes to myself, so those of us who teach at universities to the core. Is that really what we are doing? Or what people think what we are doing? Is it really that streamlining individuals who were once exceptional, unique personalities into marionettes who can pass exams? I would say certainly it is not. In my own field, forest ecology, in my old field of research and teaching, preparing students for passing the exam is certainly not enough. So since climate change has changed everything, new solutions and innovations will be required. And current knowledge, which may be the core of an exam, is certainly not enough. And it is not the final goal of education. Am I quite sure that this applies also for other fields of research and teaching? Sadly, I can't outline our plans to address how critical research-oriented teaching and self-reflection across study subjects can be facilitated in just 5 minutes at the conference opening. But what I would like to share with you is that I regard the direction ENLIGHT is taking us in as crucial for the strategic decisions to develop our collaboration. And that makes ENLIGHT an incredibly ambitious endeavor. Some of the big goals we set out to achieve may prove to be impossible to reach in the future. But one milestone which is already taking concrete form is the creation of an ENLIGHT community of teachers and learners, such as you. The myriad of individual teaching projects which we have brought into existence, as well the large visible events such as this one, have already brought us very close together. We are partners and we share expertise and knowledge, embarking new roads. Across ENLIGHT, all partners share a commitment to excellent teaching and learning. But while we face similar challenges, we often follow unique ideas or adopt different approaches, and that is what brings us together today. Listening and learning from each other will help us to our own teaching and learning processes. ENLIGHT intends to foster inclusivity instead of streamlining, challenge-based education instead of exam focus, and active engagement instead of passive compliance based on facts instead of beliefs. And in its mission statement, ENLIGHT lays the foundation of an open and integrated European university system in which barriers for international learning are removed and where flexible learning opportunities empower our learners to become globally engaged European citizens. You see, forest is always in my head in a way. And actually, last week I attended a meeting in Uppsala where the vice presidents of several European universities met, and it was exactly what I said a few minutes ago. It was about improving the environment for teaching and learning, and that is a challenge we are all facing together, and I think it's very good in a setting like this that we can share our views on that. A few minutes ago, Metin Tolan spoke about the university in the area of its foundation. In 1737, when the university brought this small town to life, Germany was far from being a union. Today, we live in united Europe, and our universities are asked to fill the European higher education area with life through our teaching and learning strategies. And as long as we keep evaluating our institutions and ourselves by asking questions such as, are we teaching the right content? Are we adopting the right learning strategies? Are we using the most effective techniques for teaching and learning? We will be well equipped to keep learning from another and improving. ENLIGHT is symbolized by a lighthouse, as all of you know. And we may be far apart, but we will always be able to see each other and guide each other, as long as the light is directed to the partners and not so much to the own lighthouse. And that, in a nutshell, is the essence of a teaching and learning conference, to guide and to see each other. And I have no doubt that you will live up to this. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Professor Ammer, about your perspectives on teaching and learning and on the ENLIGHT perspectives. I now would like to invite my dear colleague Andrea Bührmann to the stage, who is, as I already said, the academic lead of this conference, and she's also the founding director of the Göttingen Diversity Research Institute. The floor is yours.
It's better, I think. I'm responsible for diversity, and so I know all these things. Yes, dear President, Professor Tolan, dear Vice President, Professor Ammer, dear Professor Kaspar-Hehne, dear colleagues, lecturers, educational developers, and students from all 9 ENLIGHT partners universities. It's my great pleasure as conference chair to welcome you all to this year's ENLIGHT Teaching and Learning Conference. We are delighted to welcome you all in Göttingen as well as in the stream. It's my great pleasure as conference chair to welcome you all to this conference, and a warm welcome also to those joining us online. When I was approached to chair this conference, I was very happy to agree. I'm a big fan of our international network and its mission. As director of the Göttingen Diversity Research Institute, I'm convinced of the importance of diversity and inclusion. And I believe in the transformative power of co-creation. When people from different backgrounds, different disciplines, different sectors, and different walks of life come together with a common purpose, we can achieve great things. The next 2 days will be full of opportunities to exchange experiences, ideas, research results, and good practice on the topic of diversity and co-creation in higher education. We received a great number of contributions across 4 tracks, all to do with ENLIGHT's mission and our conference topic. We will showcase and discuss innovative teaching and learning approaches, share strategies and experiences on making best use of diverse perspectives, in teaching and learning settings, explore ways to establish partnerships between students and staff, between universities and communities, and across universities, and exchange ideas on designing inclusive teaching and learning settings. We have attempted to make the conference itself inclusive and have brought together researchers, lecturers, educational developers, and students. We have also organized hybrid and online sessions to allow more people to take part. I invite and encourage you all to make the most of it, to listen, to learn from another, and to build connections. I would like to thank you all for coming here, and there are some people I would like to extend special thanks to. This conference, too, is a co-creation by a diverse group of people. First of all, I would like to thank the governance board of the ENLIGHT Teaching and Learning Conference. You have shaped this conference, its topics and formats. You spread the word at your institutions. You acted as reviewers and session chairs. You recruited participants, award nominees and jury members, and you asked, I think, important questions. Thank you for your important contribution to this conference and for bringing the ENLIGHT spirit to life. Secondly, I would like to thank the conference team in Göttingen. As you know, every conference is a team effort. Thank you to Dr. Angelika Thielsch from the section of Teaching and Learning in Higher Education, who is also a member of the Governance Board, and Elena Futterbuck from the Göttingen Diversity Research Institute for their work on the conference theme and program. Thank you to the team from Göttingen International, especially to Dr. Esther von Richthofen, Diana Benisch, and Dr. Markus Auditor, and as well Christopher Zander, Alexandra Boft, and Sarah Wiesenthal for the conference organization. Without you and your team members, this would not have been possible. Marie Giesen, I think there are some more important people I want to say thank you, and Marie Giesen represented the student network both in Göttingen team meetings and the governance board meetings. Many thanks for this. And student assistants, including Miriam Flöricke and Stefan Griese, supported us throughout. This is all. There are some team members I have not named, but you have to meet them at the registration, and you will see them preparing the session rooms, taking you to the different venues, and answering your questions. Their contribution is also valued. And last but not least, further thanks go out to all those who submitted contributions, to the reviewers who provided peer feedback, to the jury members for the Teaching and Learning Award, and to all those who helped to put the nominations together. To all session chairs, to the ENLIGHT colleagues and work packages leads in Ghent, who provided support wherever it was needed. Thank you very much for doing this, and I wish you a very inspiring and insightful conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Burman, for your words. I think you warmed us up, and we now can immerse into our interesting topic. Dear ladies and gentlemen, now you expect Catherine Bourville to come to the stage. But to our great regret, Catherine will not be able to join us today. We had greatly anticipated her keynote speech and her knowledge and vision of student participation she would have shared with us. In the same vein, she was looking forward to joining our discussions and gaining new insights from us. I'm all the more grateful to our ENLIGHT partners for jumping in at the very last minute so that we are able to replace the keynote speech with an interesting panel discussion. Thank you for helping us out at this short notice. I think this really reflects the ENLIGHT spirit of partnership that we have become to value so highly since founding our University Alliance. I wish you all now a fruitful discussion, a great conference, and happy to see you during the breaks and in the sessions later on. Thank you so much.
World since Corona. We can't actually seem to be getting the microphones to work. Bear with us for 2 minutes.
Hello, hello? Hello? Do you hear me? Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you very much, and hello to everyone from me. My name is Elena Futterbuck. I'm from the Diversity Research Institute, and I have the pleasure of moderating this panel discussion. And first of all, obviously we were all looking forward to a keynote lecture, but how great is it that our network produced 8 panelists overnight who were willing to step up and help us to kick off this conference with a panel discussion. So yeah, we wish Catherine Bovell a speedy recovery, and thank you very much for all 8 of you for coming to our rescue. In order to make the most of our time, I'm going to introduce our panelists in alphabetical order of the universities, not of the people, and at the same time, in that order then, ask them to answer a very short question by telling us 2 things, 2 words that they find important in the context of this conference. So we will begin from Comenius University in Bratislava, with Jana Vyškrabková from the Faculty of Arts. Jana, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Remy. I'm not... Okay. Can you hear me, hopefully? Okay, great. So 2 words. For me, it's diversity and inspiration.
Thank you very much. From the University of the Basque Country, we have Naya Idoyaga Mondragon from the Department of Education. Will you give us your 2 words?
Yes, more than 2 words, I think that there are 2 challenges, and it will be the interdisciplinarity and the international shared knowledge. So those will be the challenges.
Thank you very much. Nia? So better. Can you, Naya, can you also hold the microphone a bit closer?
Okay.
And repeat what you said? Thank you.
Okay. More than 2 words, I think that there are 2 challenges, and it will be the interdisciplinarity and the international share of knowledge. Now, yes? Yes. Okay.
Thank you very much. And then from the University of Galway, we have Kate Malloy, a learning technologist with the Centre for Excellence in Learning and Teaching.
Yeah, I suppose my 2 words, folks, are really around collaboration and capacity. Collaboration being why the 9 universities are here, you know, to get to work together and to share our expertise, but also in my own capacity as staff development is really thinking about how we can build capacity across the Alliance. So thanks for having us.
Thank you. From the University of Ghent, we have Catherine de Bruyn from the Department of Educational Affairs.
Yes, good morning. As I work on diversity and inclusion, my 2 words are belonging, to feel at home at university for every student and for all staff members, and also awareness on our own perspectives and that of others.
Thank you. From the University of Göttingen, we have 2 people. Andrea Dorothea Bührmann, the director of the Göttingen Diversity Research Institute. Andrea, can you give us your 2 words?
Of course. My 2 words are diversity and inclusion, and I think to become an excellent university, you need diversity and inclusion. Thank you.
And also from Göttingen University, we have Marie Giesen, who represents the university's student body representation and leads the Department of Gender and Diversity there, and is also a member of the ENLIGHT student network. Marie, what are your 2 words?
For me, it is connection and interactions, because I think these are very important things to do at this conference, to get to know people with similar interests and work together and find ways to work together.
Thank you. From the University of Groningen, we have Adnan El-Karbotli from the Student Network.
Yes, thank you very much. For me, the 2 words would be, I think, participation, because I think that it is important that at a conference like this, when it comes to diversity and inclusion, that we really participate between staff members, teachers, students, bachelor, master's, PhDs, but also from the different cultures. And the second word would be, I think, listening, is because I think we all say diversity and inclusion is very important, but to really achieve that, we need to listen to one another to really understand the other perspective.
Thank you. And from the University of Tartu, we have Tom Kinsella, who also represents the students.
Yes, thank you very much. Good morning. 2 words, I suppose. The first word that comes to mind for me is an analogy based on my train trip from Frankfurt up here yesterday. I was looking out the window, and as I was looking out the window, I saw lots of colours outside of autumn. So my first word is the analogy of autumn. What makes autumn what it is? It's the mix of colours that are on the trees, the mix of leaves, what the season brings us. And that's what, I suppose, for me, diversity is about. That mix of colour. No one colour on its own makes autumn, and no one individual on their own makes diversity. The other one, I suppose, is personal from me, and it reflects some of my co-panelists here. It's a word that I'm going to borrow from Galway from yesterday. It's the word noticing. Observing is the word I probably would have used first, but noticing, for me to notice other people, it's a personal challenge for me. It's a personal challenge, I suppose, for each one of us.
Thank you very much. The next question I'd like to address first to Kate. In your opinion, which opportunities do co-creation and partnership offer for diversity and inclusion, or vice versa?
Yeah, I was really happy to get this question because I think it happens on quite a few different levels. In our case, I do an awful lot of work with our staff around peer-supported learning.
Excuse me, sorry, Kate, can you hold the microphone a bit closer?
Closer again? Sorry. So in my role, I do an awful lot of work with staff to support their professional development, particularly around inclusion and universal design for learning. And I find that the way we have that formatted in kind of a peer-supported network really helps to improve their practice, but also to improve their understanding of what it means to collaborate and to co-create. So I suppose it models it in such a way that they become more comfortable working with others, getting feedback from others, and ultimately what ends up happening is they start working in partnership with their own students on the learning design process. And in the last number of years, I was working on a national project with the Irish Universities Association, and we also had a student partnership model that was quite successful across the 7 Irish universities in that group. And the student partners, again, were really part and parcel of the design process with staff. I had a student intern for a year actually come to my own postgraduate module that I teach to staff, and just having that voice, even at the quite micro level, was so useful to staff, just to hear that student perspective, even just one student in the room. And I suppose it effectively snowballed into something where staff really want to invest some time and some effort and some energy into working with students on that level. We've had students effectively help their lecturers to redesign a course. I've had another student that worked with a professor of pharmacology that had taken the second year module and came back to help redesign it with feedback, and just, you know, having that input is so crucial, and it's not something that, you know, all academic staff frankly get. But in saying that, I have a workshop later today with 2 colleagues, an academic and Jane that was with Disability Support Services at the time, and we worked on a funded project for a couple of years together around inclusion, and what it pointed out at a wider university level is really the nature and the value of having stakeholders present, and the right stakeholders working together, thinking about the challenges we were facing and bringing all of our different perspectives from academic to teaching and learning to student supports and having a student voice. I think the work is really iterative, that it happens in small scale in the classroom, and it happens in, you know, much larger scales across our university and across this alliance. And really, I think the models that you'll probably learn about today and hear about from your colleagues and from participants at the conference, take note, and as you said, Tom, you know, it's really about thinking and reflecting and noticing. Notice what's happening and take that work back and think about applying it in your own context, because for us, there was just strength in numbers and there's strength in that partnership, and it's been the last couple of years with the various projects we've worked on, it's been a huge learning experience in terms of really getting the student voice into the classroom and seeing, even at a micro level, just fantastic improvements that have happened as a result of that.
Thank you, Kate. Naya, from your perspective, which opportunities do co-creation and partnership offer for diversity and inclusion?
Okay, my ideas were very in line with what Kate had said, but I think that it's important to work in these networks to share this vision of learning experiences and enrich our projects and add value. It's also very important to work in these networks that Kate has said, and it's essential for inclusive to work with inclusive perspectives and respect and diversity. And I think that the diversity and inclusion is a very risky but very important and necessary topic, and I'm quite grateful for the ENLIGHT for taking this risky topic. And I also think that knowing other universities can be a source of inspiration, because I think that in our universities still we have to incorporate this chip of the inclusive vision. We have to have more diverse students in our university. We have to have more diverse teaching staff and also more diverse administrative and service staff, because I think that unfortunately universities are still quite homogeneous and many people cannot reach them even today. So this is the big challenge of our universities if we really want to talk about diversity and inclusion.
Thank you very much. Jana, what is your perspective on this question?
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with what the panelists say, but I would like to share my experience from one of my courses. It's a multilingual communication course where diversity and inclusion is something that is really, really important and is the base of the course. And well, of course, the main focus of this course is on communication and on various aspects of multilingual, multicultural communication. And of course, I set some topics, some conditions, and the resources, and so on. But at the very beginning of the course, I discussed this with my students, and they can add something from their point of view. They can specify the topics, for example. They can choose their own resources according to their language abilities. We discuss also the topics. Yeah, there are some general topics like intercomprehension, something like this. But then we specify it together, and this is something what is really important, and I think it's really affect their learning during this course. I examined this in a subtle study after the course, and it proves to be really important. And students also like this idea. They can come to the class with their own ideas and add something what is really important to them. And to maybe sum up this, I really like the idea that discovering diversities means discovering unity, and this is something what is really important also in the context of my course, but I think more of us will agree with this.
Thank you very much. Adnan, I'd like to ask you from your perspective, what needs to happen so that we can truly achieve inclusiveness and equal opportunities within ENLIGHT universities?
Thank you. So that's actually a quite difficult question. So I've been thinking about it, and I think you need to break it down to what can we do within the classroom to incorporate diversity and inclusion, and what can we do outside of the classroom to incorporate diversity and inclusion. Because we all know ENLIGHT is this consortium where we aim to have more exchange between the 9 universities. But what is good to notice is that when you are in a classroom and you have this exchange, it's not 9 different cultures coming together. It's often one culture versus 8 others that are on exchange. So for a teacher, it's really good to notice that you have students from your own culture and you have 8 other cultures, or maybe even more, within your class, and that you should really incorporate all 9 of them to make them come together. The second thing is, I think, is that inclusion does not stop outside of the classroom. Of course, students follow courses and they follow classes, but once they go home at 5 o'clock, they also still need to feel included, as I think my colleague here said. So how do you really make them feel included in the culture? How do you not make them feel a guest at your country, but really make them feel at home? And I think that is something we really need to think about. So how do we incorporate them in student life? How do we incorporate them within this local sports culture, or within the local, or within the theater or cultural institutions? So that not a student that goes to class, follows his classes, and then stays at home in his hotel after 5 o'clock, but really is embedded within the local student community. And I think that is something we really need to think about for ENLIGHT, especially if we go for more exchanges and more diversity and more exchanges between students and staff members.
Thank you very much. Maria, I would like to ask you the same question.
Yes, my microphone works very well, I think. Considering the question, is this accessible for everyone, is for me the main point. You have to, in every single step that we take in our universities and that ENLIGHT takes, this should be really considered, and this should be a main focusing point. Because ENLIGHT is creating something new, something with a lot of different people who are engaging in it, and this is a really great opportunity to start it right from the very beginning, to consider inclusion and all different aspects of it in every single step, to not start with anything unless it is as inclusive as it can possibly be. And it's then good to create that system in the first place. Often our universities struggle with having systems in place that need to be changed to be more inclusive. that is definitely a step that we have to take in universities individually, but with ENLIGHT we have the chance to do it right from the beginning. And I also would add that it is very important to realize that inclusion and diversity is a constant thing that is not done with implementing one certain thing and then it's done. It is a constant process that is constantly changing and is constantly evolving and needs permanent attention. It needs permanent implication with staff, with finances that are especially set aside for that. And we need to make it a priority.
Thank you very much, Marie. Tom, what is your perspective on this?
It's difficult to follow after so many good points. I suppose as I sit here, I have a sense of imposter syndrome because I'm clearly the oldest student who's sitting here. And I think that in its own way is an aspect of diversity in some regards. But I don't want to single myself out there specifically. Where I think I would take it is that there's a lot more to inclusion and diversity than just what happens within the university campus, within the university wall, within the university community. We have to ensure that we take diversity and inclusion beyond the walls, into the communities, into the states, the countries that we live and that we work in, or that we're fortunate enough to be guests of. I'm very conscious as well that, as you can figure from my accent, I don't sound very Estonian. And I probably have the advantage of linking east and west of Europe. Coming from Galway and studying at the University of Tartu has opened up considerable opportunities as far as I'm concerned through ENLIGHT, as far as inclusion, diversity and, for example, age is concerned. And as has been said, it's a lifelong process. It's important for us too, I think, to remember, and looking at it from a student point of view, that it's more than just numbers, it's more than statistics. It's not counting people off and ensuring, yes, we have ticked that box. Because for diversity, for inclusion to be real, and for the university to have relevance in the world that it serves, it has to reach out and be inclusive in its own engagement. There's another part to that too, where that engagement with the community beyond policies, beyond procedures, it has to bring relevance for the university so the university continues to be valid in the world, particularly in the ENLIGHT world, where we speak about reaching out and being relevant and being globalized. And I think from my perspective as a student, that's hugely important, and it's an opportunity that I've had a chance to experience personally.
Thank you, Tom. That takes us nicely to the next question, because you mentioned relevance of universities. This university has changed almost beyond recognition, I think, since its founding days. And we live in a rapidly changing world at the moment. So I would like to ask Andrea Bührmann, in your perfect world, what should the role of universities be 10 years from now? Or you can go further into the future if you like.
Thank you very much for this question. I think universities could work or act as hubs for inclusion, for acceptance, and for translation. I think our obligation is not to produce more knowledge, not only to produce more knowledge, but our obligation is to act as an engaged university. I talked a lot with Hiltraud about these things. And that the students become engaged citizens. And I think this is very important. And this ENLIGHT conference and the ENLIGHT consortium, for me, is a big chance to practice this. And therefore, it's important to have this conference. Thank you.
Thank you. Catherine, I'd like to ask you the same question. How do you see universities of the future?
Okay, so I can dream a little bit now. I think my dream is close to Andrea's perfect world for universities. I think we should actually, as universities, provide learning opportunities for all of our students to achieve competences so that they can actively and respectfully engage in our societies. So I think this kind of competences should be integrated in all of our learning outcomes. And close to this, I think we should be willing to change our curricula and to see if as universities we should become really universal and to see how we integrate all those different perspectives. And third, I think also in society there is a lot of polarization and sometimes debates get really toxic. And I think universities should take a lead in detoxing these debates and to install a culture of dialogue and openness again. And last but not least, I hope that in 10 years we will all be universities with safe and inclusive learning environments in which all students can develop their talents. So that's my dream.
Thank you very much. Adnan.
Yes, so you talk about, well, we need to change our curricula to create more globally engaged citizens and to become more inclusive. So we have a lot of teachers here, and I do not think the teachers here want to wait 10 years. So is there a tip you could give to the teachers right now to change their curricula to become more inclusive or to create more globally engaged students?
I will be giving a workshop after the lunch. So, no, I think it starts with like self-awareness on your own perspectives and to be open to the perspectives of your students. And I even have some tips for teachers who are teaching mathematics and physics. So you're welcome to join my session.
Would anybody else like to share a vision?
I would share the vision that has been put out there. I am, I suppose, conscious that it may sound a little bit utopian, and I think we need to look at how we can make it real. As I look out at the audience that I see here in front, the people who are here today, each one of us is, I suppose, on that road, on that journey. We are probably part of the way to being converted, if not already converted to the importance. We're a small group of, I suppose, the academic community across Europe, and we have many other colleagues that we need to bring along with us, and there is quite a lot of diverse challenge in there, and it's how we can engage with them. It comes back, I suppose, to my concept of the autumn colours. It takes all the colours to make it happen, and it takes us to have the courage to go out and to make that happen, and to ensure that it's relevant, because I suppose the one fear I would have is that we would be in an echo chamber talking to ourselves. And that's where I was coming from with the concept of noticing earlier on, that we need to notice what's in my field of vision, what can I see, what can I do, and how can I help to make this change as an individual. And through that, with that vision, to move to the university of the future that is more engaged, that's more relevant to the life of the students, of the people who live in the future. I probably come to this with 30 years from my first bachelor's degree experience, so that goes back quite a bit, and I see how much education has changed in that time. And I look at how the relevance of that education is appropriate to my life today. And I think forward, and I encourage everybody to think about that. Think back to what your first educational experience is and how the world has changed. And we need to be dynamic, so I guess dynamism for the future university is what I would bring to that.
Just, I suppose, very quickly, we actually completed an activity with our student interns across the 7 universities on this topic, that we were working on a speculative fiction book chapter for a collection called Higher Education for Good, and we wanted students to focus in this chapter, just very briefly, on what their vision was for the, in 20 years' time, what would education look like, specifically coming out of the COVID period. And the vignettes that our students produced was absolutely, they were just fantastic, that students really wanted to feel, as others have said on the panel already, just to be part of the institution, to feel a sense of belonging, to feel a sense of place, to have spaces that were flexible, usable, to study, to work, to collaborate, improved infrastructure, improved technology, and importantly, improved flexibility, which in the COVID period, they really did, take to heart that there was flexibility and inclusion in higher ed if they had scope to participate outside of the cities where they can't commute to or they can't afford housing. And just to hear from the students themselves, a bit of feedback, sorry, just to hear those experiences from the students was just hugely refreshing. So it's a piece of work that is due to come out, but again, having that partnership and learning what they want from the future, we're going to focus on dystopian. Sorry, we debated focusing on dystopian and utopian futures, and we ultimately ended up looking at utopian because what the students presented was a model of higher education that was effectively very good for all.
Thank you. I thought it might be my fault, but it wasn't. Thank you very much. I would like to go on for ages hearing your visions, and maybe that's something that can happen in the context of the conference. Coming towards the end of this panel discussion, really sorry about the feedback. I would like to ask every person on the panel again, maybe to think of one piece of advice that you would like to share with this audience to promote diversity, inclusion or co-creation in university. Did you hear it or was it just noise? Who would like to begin? Maybe we'll begin over there. Oh, yeah. Maybe we can go around the room like this. Andrea can begin.
To start, I think the important thing is, and it's mentioned sometimes in this panel, to hear what people are saying and to see that what you understand must not be the thing the same someone wants to express. I would like to think about something which is called a constructive translation. And I think this is very important. Thank you.
Well, when I first thought about this question, what came to my mind at the very beginning was to be open-minded and respectful, and don't be afraid to discovering all these differences, but maybe to be more specific, to engage students as much as possible in the teaching and learning process. And maybe last thing, maybe to be aware and pay attention to managing even unconscious bias. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I will say that it's not enough with respecting diversity and inclusion. We have to promote it. It's our level. We have to try to highlight the non-homogeneity in our classrooms and to work with it. And because diversity and inclusion must be seen and known in order to respect it. If not, it's impossible. So if we are not working on it, if we are also saying, okay, we will respect it, it's not enough. And for that, it's essential to listen to the rest of college, to listen to our students and to keep that open mind and to participate also in events like this one, who will bring different perspectives of inclusion and diversity.
Thank you.
I suppose from my staff development perspective, I would just say, you know, the work of inclusion and inclusive teaching, it's hard work, and to support staff and to make changes really takes time. And I often see the frustrated, you know, side of staff that want to do more and have started to make small changes. And really, my role often comes down to simply encouragement, because it can seem like such a Sisyphean task to take this on and to make changes and to effectively unlearn practices, be it in our curriculum design and our biases and our assessment practices and digital content. You know, and myself included, that, you know, I'm unlearning things that I might have picked up, you know, along the way in my own studies. And frankly, the work is small, and sometimes even I feel like my work is quite micro, you know, in relation to other things that happen in the institution. But we have to remain cautiously optimistic, and I think, you know, that work, especially in the classroom and in the process of it, just creating a more inclusive environment, it is tough, and to acknowledge that. And I think effectively, you know, just for our universities to support us more, whether that's just better resourcing or recognition for that work. It is hard work, it is tireless work, but ultimately, you know, the reason we do it is for students, and, you know, we keep that at the heart of what we do.
I think I can pick up on some of what everybody has said along the way. And there are probably a couple of thoughts come to mind. One is, yes, it does take resourcing, and I suppose there is a challenge, particularly for those of us who come from maybe more peripheral universities, and the relevance that the universities have. But I suppose for us walking away from here, the thing that I suppose first comes to mind is not to be afraid to look foolish sometimes. There is nothing wrong with making mistakes, because mistakes is part of learning. And I think that when it comes to inclusion and diversity, to not do something because I'm afraid to do it, because I might look foolish in front of my students, is a missed opportunity. And I think that's an important one to take away. And I suppose I think I'll leave it at that. That's probably enough.
For me, it remains crucial that those that awareness and also dialogue are very essential. And I wanted to say, but and then it looks like I'm stealing your words, but I wanted to say something about making mistakes, and it's by making mistakes that we learn. So don't be afraid to make any.
So for me, it would be two things. One, if you give mathematics or physics, go to her workshop. Because apparently she knows how to change her curriculum. And the second thing would be indeed tying into what my two colleagues before me said. Well, one, indeed, do it with students. I think Galway gave a beautiful example on how they changed the curriculum with the students to make it more inclusive. And the second thing is, indeed, think back at when you were doing your bachelor's or your master's, which might have been 10, 20, 30 years ago, and realize that things have changed back then. So you indeed need updating, and you need that input of the students. And that will not happen today or tomorrow. So really take your time for that and have some patience.
Yeah, to add to all of the great points that have already been made, I would actually talk to, like, as the students in the room, because a lot of the times the changes that we want, or the problems that we face, the barriers that we have in our studies, can feel overwhelming and a bit too much. And then it's really good to organize ourselves and to come together in groups and to work together on this, because with this we gain more visibility and more power actually inside of the university, and can actually implement changes. And I guess the same is for staff as well. If you're teaching staff and sometimes feel like you want to make a change but don't know where to start, I guess starting with colleagues who are like-minded is probably also a good place.
Thank you very much. I have the feeling that our panelists came here onto this panel with not very much preparation, but lots of experience, many ideas, and lots of very helpful insight, and that just gives me a lot of optimism for this conference. because I'm sure that in all of you there's also a wealth of experience, of information, of ideas. So I'd like to thank all the panelists very, very much for coming here and sharing with us. And yeah, okay, no, I'm not going to repeat everything I wrote down, but just maybe 2 words I wrote down that I would invite you to take with you as well, along with what was said now, is to reflect and to connect. And I would like to invite you to do 2 things. First of all, please give our panelists a round of applause, and secondly, then stay here for a moment because there will be more information. Thank you.
Thank you very much to our panelists who had very little preparation, but also to Eleanor, who had no more preparation than our panel did. So thank you very much for pulling this off at such short notice. You will see that there's a lunch scheduled now. However, before you go to the lunch, I can see the first 2 people leaving already. We would really very much like to ask you all up on this stage for a group photo. After which we can then proceed to lunch. So you put aside the chairs here. We have our photographer up ahead. I would suggest that the taller people stand here at the back on the stage, and then we kind of disperse ourselves. So let's see if we can get it together.